You're listening to The Black Woman in the Corner Office, the podcast for women who lead, influence, and carry a whole lot more than what shows up in their title. I'm your host, Dr. Ebony Stone, and each week we talk leadership, power, community, and what it really takes to rise without losing yourself. If this conversation resonates, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, I'm Dr. Ebony Stone, and this is The Black Woman in the Corner Office. Hello, 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 and welcome to The Black Woman in the Corner Office. I'm your host, Dr. Ebony Stone, and as is normal, I have a phenomenal guest today. And what I'm going to do is what I always do. I'm going to give you a brief bio intro, but then we're going to get into the real of who she is. Today, I am joined by an accomplished executive, consultant, author, and thought leader who has spent more than 3 decades. And I know y'all looking at her. She don't look like she spent 3 decades nowhere. 3 decades helping organizations build stronger leaders and more inclusive workplace cultures. After a remarkable corporate career leading global diversity and inclusion efforts, she's now helping organizations navigate leadership, equity, and culture through her consulting practice. So I'm excited to learn more about her journey, her lessons, to talk about her books and the wisdom that she's gained along the way. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Miss Celeste Warren. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Ebony. How are you? I'm doing great. It's Friday. It's a little bit rainy here, but you know what? I'm gonna still be doing what I got to do, so I'm
Yes.
happy.
Yes, well, we are so happy to have you. So listen, I gave a really quick overview of you. I know you've spent years in HR, specifically in diversity and inclusion and rising to the highest ranks in those areas. But let's do this. Can you just tell our listeners who is Celeste Warren at the core? Who are you? And then we'll get into the career and all of those things.
Yeah. So Celeste Warren is a PK, a principal's kid.
Okay.
My father was the first black teacher and first black principal in Western Pennsylvania, in that area, and so I grew up watching him, listening to him, and my mom talk about the challenges that he faced and the barriers that were put in his way and how he overcame them. So he wasn't one to just talk about this went wrong, that went wrong, and he was one to say, and here's what I did about it. So my siblings and I had a front row seat to that. And that's something that just stuck with me throughout my life. Always asking the question, and who's not included? Who are we leaving behind? And always knowing that life is not fair, it's not equitable, especially as a black woman. But
Yes.
what my parents taught me was don't ever let that stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. And so I taught. My father was this disciplinarian, as you can imagine, his principles might be. Not a loud speaker, just very direct and efficient, effective. That was him. No nonsense. My mother was the COO and CFO of our family,
Yes.
um, and she was from. He was from that small steel mill town. My mother was from the heart of Pittsburgh, so
Mm.
she was from the city. And if you didn't know her and if you were outside of her circle of family and very close friends, you thought she was this quiet, demure lady, and she was not. She was a fireball. She was an activist. And whenever my father would talk about these things that were happening, she would get all fired up and say, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. You can imagine that Black woman who is supporting her man.
Yes.
And so I have a little bit of both of them in me. And I know when to leverage whatever I need to leverage, whether it's my mom or my dad, in order to get my point across or do what I need to do or move forward with what I'm trying to move forward with. And so I'm a mom. I have two. I was a student athlete myself throughout high school and college, and I'm the parent of student athletes all throughout high school and college. My daughter was in track and field, and my son was in soccer. And now they are out of athletics for the most part, from a collegiate standpoint. And they're in grad. My son is finished up his first year of grad school.
Okay.
And my daughter just finished up her first year of vet school.
Oh, wow.
So, they are something else. And we have a nonprofit called Destination STEM, where we try to get students of color and those in need into STEM related fields. So that's something that we started 5 years ago. And I love, love, love it. I love doing that work and love working with my son and my daughter. And I'm also a wife, been married we celebrated 26 years.
Congratulations.
April. And thank you. And so, I'm all of those things. I'm an auntie, I'm a sister, and all of those things. And that's what's really important to me. And I'm walking in my purpose. When I became a chief diversity and inclusion officer 10 years ago, 11 now, and then I knew that was my calling. It wasn't a job at that point, even though I'd been in human resources doing work to make sure that we had inclusive policies and things, but that I knew was my calling. And so I started thinking about 5 years ago, like, Celeste, what do you want to do post-Merck? What do you want to do in your next chapter? What does that look like? And so I began making plans about it because I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay doing this work and helping people become more inclusive leaders, helping there be more fair and equitable practices within organizations, institutions, universities, nonprofits, a variety of different areas. And so that's kind of what I do. And I published my second book, The Truth About Equity, around the same time that I was leaving and retiring and going into this next chapter. And I just love it. I love the autonomy. I love the liberation. And what I told people was because they asked me, like, oh, Celeste, why are you leaving? What are you doing? Why are you leaving now? And I said, I've got to take this fight to the streets. I have to do it in an unencumbered way. I have to do it my way. And I need to make sure that I get this message out, especially during this time. So I spoke a long time, but sorry about that. That's me.
Oh, no. I think it's so important that we get context, right? Context tells us. Sometimes we think that people just woke up and they became CEO, COO, Chief Diversity Officer, right? There is a story behind all of us, the purposes that are placed on our lives and how we got there. I don't think anything is done by happenstance. I believe all my listeners know I am a woman of faith, and I believe wholeheartedly that God has a plan, right? And so I don't think it was by mistake that you were in a family with, from the way you described it, two very different personalities, right? I'm envisioning as you talk, I'm envisioning your father. I've never seen him, never even seen a picture, but I'm envisioning kind of like this gentle giant, right? And I'm of a person, right? Whether large, small, whatever, just a gentle giant of a spirit, right? And then I see this fireball, right? Your mom and the two of them coming together, and you being able to pull on that when you need to, right? I wrote as well in my book about being from parents who have very, very different personalities, right? I find dichotomies in my experience all along the way, and I don't think there's any mistake in that. It gives you what you need to do the work that you are doing. And
You know what they
so,
say, Dr. Ebony? They say man plans, we plan, and God laughs. So
yeah,
as a
yes,
woman of faith, I fully understand too. Someone
yes,
asked me, it was a few years back, they were like, well, Celeste, what's your 5-year plan? And I just started laughing. I said, well, I have some ideas, but I let my steps be ordered because that's
yes.
the best plan that could be for me. So I fully,
Listen,
fully understand.
I can tell you right now that 5 years ago, when I wrote out my 5 year plan, oh, God had a good old laugh. He chuckled. He was like, "Oh, girl, that is not what 5 years is going to look like for you. You have no idea." So, yes, we can do our best to plan, but in the end, as long as you let your steps be ordered, it could be very different. It can be very
That's
different.
it. That's it. I can imagine him as you're writing your plan saying, "Oh, baby girl."
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ah.
And you know what? I should probably go get one of those because I write them all out every year. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. This. Listen, right now, my life is so different than what I thought it would be
Mhm.
5 years ago. So I want to take a step back,
Mhm.
and then I want to get to this time. I want to talk a little bit. I know you write about it, but
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit about how you even got into the work that you're in, because I know it's not where you started. It's
Mhm.
not where you thought your career would be. Right? It's one of those things that, as you say, God probably laughed along the way, right? So tell us a little bit about, go as far back as you want to go. Tell us a little bit about how you got even into the HR world and eventually into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Before we continue, if you've ever felt the pressure to perform, produce, and prove while carrying everything else, I wrote The Power of the Pause for you. It's a practical guide to leading with clarity instead of burnout, and it's available now, along with corner office apparel designed for women who mean business. Check the show notes for your link so you can get your copy or you can get your t-shirt. Oh, and if your organization is looking for a host, facilitator, or speaker who understands leadership and lived experience, you can book me directly at drebonystone.com. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Well, that's an interesting story. When I was in high school and in college, I told you I was a student athlete and I wanted to be a reporter. I didn't, that was it. It was like, that's what I want to do. I was on the high school newspaper staff and yearbook staff. I, when I got into college, I went to college on a volleyball scholarship at the University of Kentucky. And so I also was on their school newspaper. I was a sports reporter, one of the first Black female sports reporters back then. And then when I graduated, um, I got hired in the local, actually was the largest radio station in the state of Kentucky, the voice of the Kentucky Wildcats. And so I was doing that for a while, and I just wasn't, you don't make a lot of money when you're in these smaller markets.
Yeah.
And so they say that in that industry, 10% of the people are making 90% of the money, and
Mhm.
the other 90% are making the other 10% of the money. And that's exactly true. And I got tired of writing home to my mom and dad, and I needed money for rent for the apartment, and just all kinds of silliness. And I'm like, I'm adulting. I graduated from college. I should be on my own here, being able to do all of this on my own from a financial standpoint. And
Mhm.
so I thought, well, once I get a job in television, I'll be okay. I'll be making all kinds of money. Everything will be great. And so I ended up getting an interview at the ABC television affiliate down there in
Okay.
Lexington, and interviewed, got the job, was so excited. I'm like, here I am, here I go. And I got the contract in the mail for the job, and it was only a few $100s more of what I was making as a radio reporter. And
Wow.
I was totally disgusted. I was so disenchanted. I went through pre mid-career crisis.
Okay.
And I was so deflated when I was reading it. And so I was talking to my older sister, And she said, well, why don't you, I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't live like this. I loved being a reporter, but I just couldn't, I just felt like there was more for me.
Yeah.
You have that feeling that it's just,
Yes.
this isn't my path,
Yes.
And
You
so,
hadn't found peace with it.
yeah, yes. And so I'm just really, really struggling. And my sister, she said, well, why don't you go back to school, get your master's degree? I wasn't, so I'm someone who I viewed school as the means to an end. I wasn't a professional student. That wasn't, that wasn't me. And so she was like, well, just go get your master's degree. And I said, yeah, I suppose I could do that. And it'll give me time to really figure out, what does this next step look like?
Mhm.
And so she said, well, come to Carnegie Mellon. I come back home. My mother talked me into coming back home. I
Okay.
was from the western side of Pennsylvania. And so I got into Carnegie Mellon. And at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, well, I'll take the journalism and telecommunications major I had in undergraduate, the political science minor that I had, and then do something like become a campaign manager in Washington, D.C., and, go into the political front. And so that's why I thought, that sounds like something I might want to do. And when I got into school, the guidance counselor there, career counselor, she said, "Oh God, no, you don't want to do that." And I said, "Why not?" She said, "Because it's so volatile. If you're a campaign manager for a candidate, it's ebbs and flows. If they win, that's
Yeah.
great. If they lose, you're out of a job.
Yeah.
So she said, "Have you ever thought about human resources?" And I was like, "Oh, human resources," because my idea was, some woman in a closet somewhere with a bun in the back of her head passing out applications. And she said, no, 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 no. And she kind of opened my eyes to the whole field, organizational development, design, and learning and development, and compensation and benefits, and just all of the different things that were involved with it. And I was like, oh, I said, that sounds kind of interesting. And so we had to have a mandatory internship in between our first and second year of grad school. And so I interviewed to this day, one of the best interviews I've ever had was that interview that I had it was for a job with, remember the old General Foods?
Yes. Yes.
And it was in their headquarters in White Plains, New York. So I interviewed, and it didn't even feel like an interview. It was the person who was he was the head of organizational development there. And we were just talking. He was asking me questions around, do you think leaders are made, or do you think that they're developed and nurtured, and stuff like that. And so we're talking and everything. And next thing you know, he looks at his clock and says, well, Celeste, I really enjoyed talking with you, but it's time for the next person to come in. And I was like, we're done? That's it? What are you going to ask me, like, other questions?
All the questions I prepared for, right?
Yeah, exactly. The top 5 questions. And
Right.
so, I was like, okay. And I ended up getting the internship.
Okay.
So I interned there throughout the whole summer in White Plains, New York. And it was like hand to glove. I was like, people get paid for this, because it was like, I was just basically helping people, talking to them about their careers, helping it to be better work environments, helping them develop in their careers. And I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was having a ball. And so when I got back to grad school, they made me an offer. And so I knew throughout the last semester, that I was going back to General Foods, back to White Plains, and could relax, that last semester, because I had a job. And so I did human resources first at General Foods and at Kraft Foods, Maxwell House Coffee, and traveled sort of. I was the type of person that I had a different job every 2 years and in a different city, and it got to the point where it was just me and my cat, and then it got to the point where at the 18-month milestone, I didn't buy a lot of groceries because I was always cleaning out the refrigerator and had all this food and stuff as I was moving. And so And I didn't own a lot of stuff because I was this young kid, just, like I said, packing up. Most of my stuff could fit in a car
Okay.
because I was renting, renting apartments, renting furniture and all this stuff. And then I was down in Jacksonville, Florida, working in labor relations at a Maxwell's Coffee facility there, and got the call from Merck, and it was from a headhunter, and I didn't know anything about pharmaceutical companies at all.
Okay.
And so I called my younger sister, who at the time was working for Pfizer.
Okay.
And I said, tell me about this Merck, this company. What's it about and everything? And she was like, oh, you got to go on the interview. You got to
Mm.
go. So here she is. She's with a competitor. And she was saying, Merck is a great company. You need to go, da, 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 da. And I went and interviewed and got in the job. And the pharmaceutical industry was so different from the industry that I came from, where you're pinching pennies and trying to scrape and grab for that for all the revenue you can get with consumer products and all of that. Where with pharmaceuticals, takes a longer term time to make the product,
Yes.
years, and then your the selling model was different, and just the whole industry was more very conservative, and it was just very interesting.
Okay.
And so I learned a lot and loved it. And then fast forward, oh gosh, 18 years with
Mm.
them in different parts of the company. And I got a call from my then boss, the CHRO, and she said, Celeste, can you come over and and talk with me? And I said, sure, what's up? And they had asked me about the head of diversity and inclusion a couple times before, and I didn't want to take it because it was something that I was passionate about. It was something that it embodied me. And
Mm-hmm.
so every job that I had, I was doing fine. I was implementing different strategies and everything. And I had that sphere of control and influence over wherever I was.
Okay.
and I just felt like, I don't want to go into and do that globally, because people they may not embrace it like I do. And how
Okay.
much of a fight is that? And
Right.
so she's sitting there and she's talking to me about it. And I'm like, oh God, here we go, having this conversation again. And she kept saying, we really want you to have this. And so I said, well, who's we?
Mm.
And she said, well, Ken Frazier was the CEO at the time. And, Ken was one of the few Black CEOs
Right.
in a Fortune 100 company. And she said, Ken and I, and she said, and he wants to talk to you about it. And I was like, here's my out, because Ken is a busy, busy man, and he's not going to be able to talk to me for weeks, probably months. And so I can weasel my way out of this. And I said, sure, I'd love to talk to Ken, no problem. And so she then says, great. She grabs my hand and walks me over to his office. He stops what he's doing, and he says, Celeste, come on in. So we had a great conversation. He really challenged me. And I say played the Jedi mind trick on me too, because coming from as a PK, and even though I respected authority, I also challenged authority too.
Okay.
And I didn't know different with him. And he asked me the question. He said, do you have a question for me? And after we had been talking, and I said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, I just have one question for you. Are you serious about this? And he said, well, what if I told you I wasn't? And he
Mm.
goes, well, you know what? I said, oh, okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to take the job, and you're going to come along this ride with me, and we're going to make some change and this and that, blah, 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 blah. So he played the Jedi mind trick on me.
He got you.
He got me. He got me. And so the rest, as they say, is history. And so I was in that role for 10 years
Mm.
before I retired and started doing my own thing.
Okay. Wow. That's an amazing story. It's also hilarious how you ended up in the role.
They,
What do
they,
you
they,
think?
they certainly pulled one over on me.
Yes. Yes. So in our current climate, we've been on a roller coaster when it comes to the whole field of
Mm-hmm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm curious as to your take um, on the roller coaster, right? What I think there is no. I was getting ready to say there's no argument about whether or not it's needed, but clearly there is an argument about whether or not diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that's needed. But I'm just curious as to your take on this roller coaster of affirmative action no longer happening, and George Floyd, and the birth of all of these DEI programs and all of these companies, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And then
Yeah.
what is your take on kind of this roller coaster that we've been
Yeah,
on?
and that's a good question, because I think history has shown us that whenever there's a period, and it doesn't make a difference what country, it's not just the United States, it's any country. Whenever there's a period of a rise in social activism, the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the LGBTQ plus movement, Me Too, all of these different things, whenever you see that rise, the following few years, the pendulum shifts and it goes into a conservatism. And
Mm,
history has shown us that time and time again, the pendulum just swings, boom, boom, boom. And whether that's a matter of years or decades, it always swings. It always happens. And so if we look at more recently in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and everything that happened there during the pandemic, when I like to call it a perfect storm, because everyone was still, it was
yes.
quiet across the world. And you were confined with understanding what was happening in the world through your computer screen, through your phone, through your iPad. And so we were forced to watch. Everybody was forced to watch what happened to George Floyd. And so
Mhm.
then it became, okay, wow, this really happens. This happens to African Americans, and oh my
Yes.
God. And it was seen around the world, not just in the United States, but there was a reaction around the world. And then adding on top of that with the pandemic, you saw the light was, we shined a light on the health inequities and
Yes.
what was happening there when this with the standpoint of people and how the inequity was happening and the gap in
Mhm.
healthcare. And then we also saw it too with in education, because we were at home with our students, and depending on the school system and what zip code that school system was in and who they service, you saw there wasn't laptops and iPads and Google Pads and all these things that you could just give out to students. You saw pictures and newscasts where the mom is sitting there with her kids and they're on her phone outside of a Starbucks that has free Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all of these inequities were happening and people saw it. And so they said, wow. And for some people, not some people, but for some people, they didn't realize that these inequities were happening.
Mm.
So, or if they knew it was happening, they didn't care and they didn't look at it. They had choices when they were out and about of
Yes.
ignoring it. And you couldn't ignore it during the pandemic. And so then you started to see the rise in social activism. You started to see the people doing, hiring chief diversity officers or donating money, the federal grants, all of these different things that were happening to try to close the gap. And in many ways, a lot of it was performative, because they would
Yes.
hire a chief diversity officer, wouldn't give them a staff, wouldn't give them a budget, putting them lower down in the organization, not granting them access to C-suite leaders, not giving them the resources they need to really impact change within the organization. Um, you saw people, saying, "Oh, we're going to allocate money to this nonprofit or this cause or this organization," and then as soon as the pendulum started swinging, we started coming out of the pandemic, we were able to better deflect and begin to start ignoring again. We were
Yeah.
beginning to get on with our own lives, um,
Mhm.
focus on the business. And then you started to see the folks that felt they were left behind during that time frame starting to raise up and notice the acts of equity that were happening and feeling like it was preferential treatment for these groups, and I was left behind. I didn't get it, even though they were in the positions of power and in the majority, but they felt left behind. And so you started to see this rise of conservatism. And that's where
Mm,
we are right now. We're in that the pendulum has swung the other way, but it's starting now to come back. And you're starting to
mm,
see sort of the chinks in the armor. If you're, I usually have in my office, I have the news on, and and so you start to see certain things happening from a legal standpoint, from a education standpoint in organizations. And so it's starting to slowly, people are starting to, from a political social economic standpoint, people are starting to question things that are happening. And the
yes.
way that I like to, when I'm talking with people, I say, you say that you've gotten rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can't get rid of it, because diversity is simply
Right.
differences in people, those you can see and those you can't see. And
Mhm.
so you have all of these different people in an organization. Let's use that construct. In an organization with all these different perspectives, skills, capabilities, strengths, areas for development, life experiences, cultures, identities, and you're trying to get them to this collective purpose within the organization. Well, how do you do that? Well, first, you have to create a culture around them of inclusion, so they feel like the differences that they have, that they're valued.
Yes.
And then the second thing, you have to meet them where they are, because they started in different places.
Mhm.
And that's how they became different. But you have to meet them where they are, understand those skills, those capabilities, those strengths, those areas for development, those life experiences,
Mhm.
understand the barriers and obstacles that are getting in the way from them being able to be more successful.
Yeah.
And then you need to be blowing those obstacles away. And those are the acts of equity,
Yes.
because for some people they need one thing, for other people they need something else. And so anyone who is a manager and is a good manager, they're already doing the acts of equity. They're already faced with diversity on their teams. They know that in order to be successful, they have to create this culture where everyone on their team feels valued and empowered and engaged, so they can get what they need to get done and get them to this collective purpose. So
Yes.
I laugh when people say that it's gone away. It's like, what do you think? How do you think things are done? They're not done through a paper, a pencil, a laptop, a spreadsheet, a bricks and mortar in a building. They're done through
Through
people,
people. Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. As you were talking, I was reminded of my mom
Mm,
and her raising us and saying, and my dad has said it as well, that there, I love all of my kids, but they all need something different. They all need discipline in a different way. They need love in a different way. They need all of those things in a different way to pull this family together. And that's what I'm reminded of when you talk about it, right? So maybe you're pulling language out of things, or maybe you're pulling funding for certain things away, but you can't get, to your point, you can't get rid of
mm.
diversity. It innately exists in the fact that we are all different humans, right? We are all different human beings. So I absolutely love that. So when you say the pendulum is starting kind of to swing back, I've got two questions. First, um, do you think we'll ever get to a point where the pendulum just is in the middle and it's not swinging so far to the right or to the left, or right, that we are in a place where we understand how we need to march forward, right, and that we're not seeing these huge swings? That's my first question. And then my second question is, with the pendulum starting to swing back, what is your advice specifically for our audience, which is mostly Black women in leadership positions across the world?
So the first thing, and Dr. Ebony, it's so funny that you said that because, as I said, history says the pendulum keeps swinging, and I ideally would like to see that pendulum right in the middle
Yes.
because it means that it's a culture, it's a society that's working for everyone, and that
Yes.
no one is being left behind. And it's hard. It's hard to see that because, as I said, history has shown that it just swings back and forth.
Mhm.
And right now, where I see it, because we have swung so far to the right, we swung so far to a conservative stance over the last year and a half, that I almost feel like it's going to do a rubber band slam back to the left
Mm,
and then sort of weave its way back. But at first, it's going to go bam and then come back
okay.
because that's how it fell. It went from, because think
Yeah.
about it, 2025, 2024. We actually started seeing this in 2023, to be honest with you, with the reversal of Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
You just started to see stuff, in social media, and it was starting to rear its head.
Hmm.
And think about that. That was only 3 years
Yeah.
after 2020. Three
Yes.
years after people were so supportive and, oh my God, what can we do? 3 years. That's a blink of an eye.
Correct.
And so, it swung so hard back after that period. And so we're seeing this really period where it is like super conservatism, and I do believe I know that it's swinging back because you start to see the little chinks in the armor, and you saw it from an economic standpoint when the government shut down, and they showed on media, on the news and everything, the food banks, and you saw the lines and lines and lines and lines of people backed all the way up, of people in line at the food bank. What did those people look like? Who did they look like? What identity did they have?
Hmm.
And so I think that there's a question of, wow, I thought that it would be this group. I thought that immigration would only affect that group. I thought that the things that they were doing were only going to affect that group. But oh my
Mm,
God, it's affecting all of us. The gas price at the pump is affecting all of us.
yes.
The rising grocery prices is affecting all of us. The war in Iran is affecting all of us.
Yes.
This tariffs in is affecting all of the companies that do
Yes.
trade overseas. The layoffs that are happening as a result of some of the economic conditions are affecting our communities, all
Yes.
communities. And
Yes.
so, there's this thing where I think people are starting to say, wow, okay, hmm, we need to make some change.
Yeah.
Now we'll see what those changes might be
Mhm.
upcoming, either in voting or in different things that happen. But I do believe that people are starting to see it. And then to answer your second question, um, Black women, the 92% I'll talk about, after November 2024, we were tired.
Yes.
If you're like many of us, we got in bed, we put the covers over our head, and it took us a while to come out.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, for me, I didn't have the luxury because I was in, the chief diversity officer role. I didn't have the luxury of staying in my bed under my covers for too long because I was needed.
Yes.
I was needed by, many of the individuals within our organization and then also outside of our organization as well, with the network that I had cultivated over the years, and colleagues checking in on them. Are you all right? How are you doing?
Hmm.
What I would say, and what I have said to especially the Black women who are in positions of leadership, stay the course. Because as I said, the pendulum's going to be swinging back and forth. The pendulum's going to swing back. And what I would say, though, is pay attention to how people are acting around you now, how they've been acting over the last year and a half. Because their true colors come out during times of challenge.
Yes.
And when the pendulum swings back, and it will, and they all start wanting to get back on the diversity, equity, and inclusion bandwagon, and they want to be your friend again, and they come up to you and say, you know what, I want to be your mentor. I want to be your sponsor. I want to help you succeed. I want to. Be careful who you bring back underneath your tent.
Yes.
Be very, very careful, because you want to make sure that you have the people who are going to support you through thick and through thin, through good times and through bad times, that know you, know what you're capable of, know the value that you bring to your organization, to your role, and have stood by you throughout this whole time.
Yes.
Those are the people that you need to stay with you, that still need to be your personal board of directors, no matter how they identify. They could be across a variety of different dimensions of diversity.
Yes.
But remember them. And then when the pendulum swings back and the tide starts to turn and people start code switching again, you don't need those people who weren't with you right now. You don't need them, because you have value. You have self-worth. You have your authenticity. People value you. They see you. You have your sphere of influence. You have your sphere of control, and you hang on to that, because we are going to be needed so much in the future, but we're going to have choices.
Yeah,
we're going to have choices. And so I would say that's what the advice that I would give to these black women, and especially the black women leaders.
Yes, I love that. And I love the perspective, right, of the pendulum swinging back and forth. I think is important to understand and to stay the course. You know, I know, as I'm sure you do, many Black women who have been impacted by layoffs, who have struggled to find employment and all of those things. Amazing leaders, right? Doing great things, impacted, and to know that that pendulum will swing back, and people will be looking for you. But as you say, be careful who you bring under your tent. Well, listen, I have so many questions, but I know we only have so much time, right? I am so intrigued by this conversation. I want to do two things before we wrap up, because I know you've got to get out of here. The first thing is I want you to tell my audience what's next for Celeste Warren. Where can they find you? Where do they follow you? What can they see? I know we can tell us a little bit about the book. I know it's on Amazon. I listened on Audible, all of those things. Tell us where we can find you. That's the first thing. And then
well, you can find me on my website. It's www.crwdiversity.com. CRW is my initials, crwdiversity.com. And, subscribe. I don't write a newsletter every week or every month, but I write one probably about 3 or 4 times a year. And then a small one when something really big crops up that I feel like, you know what, I want to get my voice out there. Okay. But you can see me there. I'm on Instagram, CRW Diversity. I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Celeste Warren, she, her. I'm on Substack. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, where I really get down and dirty and into the conversations. And so please, because I like the conversation. I like the engagement. You can also find my book on Amazon, The Truth About Equity, what it is, what it isn't, and why everyone wins when we get it right. But please follow up. And I love the engagement, as I said, and let's have a conversation and continue the dialogue and support of each other as well.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So everything is down in the show notes. Make sure we follow on LinkedIn. Make sure we go to the website and subscribe to that newsletter. I'm still learning Substack, so I'm going to be checking you out on Substack. You guys make sure you get Substack, and then YouTube, right? You should be tagged
and Instagram.
And Instagram. Make sure we
Instagram,
follow.
I also get a little bit more personal too. So
Okay. All
you
right.
need to subscribe to Instagram.
Yes, yes. So get make sure you follow in all the places and engage in the conversation. And then although I have so many questions, I'll be engaging on all the spaces and
Oh,
asking the
yes.
questions and all of those things. Let me ask you this. It's something that I ask all of my guests before we get
Uh-huh.
out of here. As you reflect on your life and where you've come from, where you're going, the work that you're doing, if someone reaches out one day and they say, "Hey, Celeste, we're intrigued and we want to do a movie about your
Mm.
life," what would you call that movie and who would play you?
I would call that movie, I think I would call it She's a Survivor.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of impartial to Halle Berry.
Okay. All right. I love it. I love it. So, Miss Halle Berry, if you're out there and somebody approaches you and tells you they want you to play the part of Celeste Warren, we want you to be in that movie because she's a survivor, right? So, listen, Celeste, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I thank you so much for sharing. I'm taking so much away from this conversation today, and I'm looking forward to the future conversations in all of the places. And for all of you out there, listen, if you don't take anything else away from this conversation, what I want you to take away from this is exactly what Celeste said. Pay attention now and be careful who you allow under your tent as we move forward. Celeste, has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And guys out there, you know what to do. Until we see you in a couple weeks, keep spreading that Black girl magic on everything you do. We'll see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode spoke to you, share it with another Black woman who needs this reminder. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll find links to my book, apparel, and speaking information in the show notes. Until next time, lead with intention and give yourself permission to pause. And you know what else? Keep spreading that Black girl magic on everything you do.